Hello everybody, welcome back to Yan's Cake Tips. Thank you so much for joining me again. Today is a special day. I'd like to share with you the most asked and long-awaited tutorial, how to make your own fondant. I'm sure some of you are already smiling, but if you think that I'm going to do another marshmallow fondant recipe, I'm not going to do that. And also, it is not going to be a copy of a recipe made with ingredients which you can read from the packaging of commercial fondants. As you can remember that when you read that, you see that a lot of eat something, eat that, and eat this. So we're not going to try to clone any kind of these commercial recipes. We're going to do something simple, very humble, a recipe that you can make it very easily and coat your cake without any problem. Actually, manufacturers of fondants, I'm sure they wish that they didn't have to reveal that kind of information by law. That would have definitely increased their sales by discouraging some of the experienced pastry chefs like me, if I may say so, who choose to use similar ingredients to make their own products. Well, it is actually saves a lot of money in the long run. In fact, I did that and produced estimate 50 to 100 kilo in a fortnight fondant, and it was almost 20 years long, at least about altogether, I'm guessing 30 tons in average. So it was okay, but too complicated, too many ingredients, and I have to get it from the special supplier, and I cannot buy just a kilo, I have to buy in big bags. So which you cannot pick up from the shelf, those ingredients. And you can never get the same silkiness as a commercial product. Because the icing sugar, the particular size, what you can get from the market is too coarse, probably grade 6 or 8, and the manufacturers use 12, maybe so far 14, very, very fine. When I was searching in the internet, I came across to this excessive amount of information about icing sugar, the grain size and etc. at Julie Asher's website, Cookie Connection. Link is below. I met with Julie in Australia once. She's a very nice lady, and she was featuring a blog post of a Belgian cookie artist, Lisbeth Scheittiketty. I'm not so sure I spelled that name correctly. If not, even that I speak German a little bit, I apologize, Lisbeth. Okay, let's get back to subject matter and talk about what is the fondant and what are the main components of it. So there's three main components in the fondant. One is the combiners. So it is a sticky pulp that join all the sugar grains together into a paste. So that could be a multiple of gums and additives, but we're not going to worry about this today. We're going to about what we're going to do today. Only one thing we're going to use. I'll show you soon. And the second thing is the body, which is the main volume of the fondant, is icing sugar, or can be used also icing mix, what we're going to do today. And then the third component is something to be added into fondant that the fondant doesn't get dry so easily. So the component is what we're going to use, which is also, it's happened in every fondant, there's fat inside. So that doesn't let paste completely dry, so it can stay long time, palatable and also pliable. Now let's see which ingredients I choose for each group to make a simple fondant today. Most available ingredients for number one, which is a combining element, is a starch. So it has to be simply the right starch because there's so many different starches. Mix with the right amount of water and process to a pulp by producing heat. I'm going to use microwave. So tapioca starch is my choice with a very good reason. I'll show you very soon. I also add a little bit of CMC /Tylose. You can use both of them anyway, it's very similar or same thing, to increase the stretch. For the body, I prefer the icing mix rather than the pure icing sugar because it contains 5% starch, functions as an anti-caking agent, so the icing sugar doesn't get sort of lumps in the bag, so which also help us to make the paste less sticky because of that starch. Okay, so the fat has to be firm and white. So the shortening is the optimum choice. It is available white and firm enough. In Australia, we have this fat called copper. It's very white and used also by other delicatessen for Christmas and everything. So it's a firm fat and it's available. And maybe somewhere else you can say Crisco shortening is a good choice. Now, I like to show you a short demonstration to understand the difference between all the different starches and why I choose the tapioca is my choice. So basically, as I mentioned, there's three groups: combiner, which is the glue materials, gluey pulp, and then the body is the icing sugar, which is icing mix. This is icing mix with the starch inside. One of the starch we're going to use, basically tapioca, but I'm going to show you the other rest. And then Tylose belongs to that group because it's combining agent, and at the same time I have the copa here as a fat part. So let's talk about this first. I have here tapioca and glutinous rice, but don't be confused. There's no gluten inside. There's a rice flour. There's also corn flour. So all of them you see is white. You know, then also there's a confusion between like what's the flour, what's the starch. So when you look at, for example, corn flour is a starch, but corn flour is not a starch. So corn flour means that the corn, the whole kernel is become powder. It's yellowish. You can mix it with the water. You can just create sort of like a bit kind of dough you can roll. But starch, which is the starchy part, the corn flour, which is flour, but it's actually, I don't know. This is really it's a kind of question mark in different countries. What is called flour, what's called starch. So this is a question mark, but just don't confuse. The powders which is when you're mixing with water, it becomes a milky liquid, like either a thicker or thinner liquid. This not a flour. This is a kind of starchy stuff. Same thing for rice, for example. Rice flour is actually the powder of the rice, but different rice makes a different kind of rice flour. It's a glutinous rice, is different rice, and that's it. So don't confuse with that. Okay. So now what I like to do is over here. No, just before that, I mentioned about Tylose here. All right, this is nothing to do with that. All right, then we have water. So what I like to do now, I'm going to mix. This is not a recipe. Only finding out understanding the texture of the starch, different starches. So I'm gonna mix. I have already 20 grams of each in this cups, and I'm gonna mix 3 times water inside. So 20 gram to 60 gram water become a sort of milky sort of liquid, and I'm going to put them into the microwave for 1 minute and just see the result. So basically you can understand what I'm talking about. So tapioca. That's it, 59 gram, doesn't matter. So I'm going to be doing that myself, 60 gram liquid on every one, and I will get back to you when I'm putting in the microwave. Okay, it's all mixed. So when I said that you can't make a dough out of these starchy things, but if you introduce heat, of course, you can do it. My favorite food, Asian food, is a kway teow, which is a rice noodle, actually done from the glutinous rice flour and the tapioca together. So it's a beautiful paste which is when you cook it, it becomes like a noodle. I love it. So let me start from the corn flour, corn starch. Okay. 1 minute goes inside. So at the same time, when you're putting this in the microwave, you have to mix it last minute because the powder settles down. So you have to mix it again just before introducing heat. Okay. 1 minute. Okay. Look what happened. Let's take another spoon. All right, so it becomes like a bit of like a jellyish thing. All right, it's nice, beautiful. So this actually I like it. But what's happening is when you mix with this the icing sugar, somehow that the starch doesn't retain the liquid. It is like it melts the icing sugar very easily. So I will show you the difference between this and tapioca at the end. So let me do this too also, and I get back to you while I'm doing tapioca. Now, corn, rice, and glutinous rice is finished. So the corn is like a quite sort of like a kind of semi-transparent and then quite bouncy. But as I said, when I mix it with the sugar, it melts the sugar easily. So rice is the ugliest one. So it's not really nice. I don't want to even try to do something with that. And glutinous rice is much better, so more like a custard, all right? But you will see now when I do the tapioca, it will be completely different. So if I have over here also wheat starch and potato starch, you will also see different results, but I don't have to really show you that because this 4 is enough to see the difference. So let's put the tapioca. As you see that it's already settled down, it's the water on top, powder underneath. So I'm just going to mix like this, make it sort of homogenize again. Okay, check in the microwave, another minute. As you realize that I put same amount of water on every one and the same amount of powder, so to see the physically how it's different. 2 more seconds. Done. Look at that. So that is the tapioca, and you see that the color is nice and sort of like a very transparent. And look at the texture. So it's like a, do you realize that this is same as like a gelatin when you mix in the right amount? So that is pretty much like a what I'm looking for. It's like a very strong and sticky, and then like a sort of like a stretching itself. That is the for my opinion, is the most reliable starch that I can use to make my fondant. All right. So what we have seen here is only for, as I said, just to see the physical differences. That's not the recipe, because over here we have 3 times water to 1 time of the starch. So my recipe here, 1 time tapioca starch, which is 10 grams, and I have 6 times water in there. So why I do that? So if I get this one now, is try to mix it with the icing sugar, you will realize that it is very difficult to combine together because it is like a very rubbery here, and icing sugar is a powder. It's very difficult to push the icing sugar into that texture because it's just very resistant to join together. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take another bowl. I make a tapioca starch sort of like combining sort of like a pulp by mixing water and sugar at the same time. I make it like a much more easy to mix mixture, but the sort of tapioca is still there to make the icing sugar easier to join in. So what I do is over here, let me explain that. Don't think this is very complicated. The first one is here is a pulp. So tapioca starch, 50 gram icing mix and 60 gram water. It is still liquid, sort of milky liquid. I'm going to put this one about maybe 1.5 minutes into the microwave to make the mixture ready. Then I will take the icing sugar, shortening tylose together on the table and put this in the middle and mix it together. You will see how easy to finish it. All right. So what I said, 10 gram tapioca. So this time I don't rely on this scale because this is like a I don't know, it's maybe about how many grams is it? 2 grams I think each. 1 gram, but I like to have this one. This is much more sensitive scale. So I like to put 10 gram of that tapioca mixture, tapioca starch. So here. By the way, all those starches come from Thailand. So as you see that there's a blue, the green, and the red. Red means the R is the red. The green means G is the glutinous starch. So you can differentiate with the color. All right. The blue, I'm not so sure what's the sort of like a color meaning on that. It is a. I mean, when you go to Asian groceries, this is the brand that you always find. This is like a Era One brand. I guess this is Elephant brand, whatever it is called. What we said, 10 gram. You see that one measures 1/10 of a gram. Okay, 10.1, it's already good enough. This one goes here. This kind of recipes is pretty much like trial and error kind of mixture. I tried it a couple of times and this is the best result I get it from that. How many gram of the icing sugar? 50 gram icing sugar. So this time now, I'm going to put this one here. $50 icing sugar. So that icing sugar makes the pulp softer, but the functionality is the same. 50 gram. And I mix it with 60 gram water. $60. There will be no lumps here because that sugar is like a going between the starch pieces, and the water will melt all together, so that will be just nice. Okay, make sure that the whisk doesn't sort of stuck on the bottom. That's it. With this amount, and then with this bowl, you don't need to have a cling wrap, but if you have a smaller bowl, I think you need a cling wrap, otherwise it can boil and then just get over it. So I'm going to put 1 minute first. If I'm not happy with the result, I'm just going to go a couple of more seconds. So I put another 30 seconds. It is just beautiful. Look at this. Look at this. That's a really nice pulp to start with. All right. So I'm going to clean up now. In the meantime, this will cool down a little bit. And also this one, I'm going to put 1 minute plus 30 seconds. But having said that, of course, depends how big you do. So if you put over here twice the amount, you have to increase the number of seconds more in the microwave. Basically, you have to get this texture. So there is no liquid, there's no powder inside, everything incorporated, and it's already cooked to the nice pulp. All right. So going to clean up now. We're going to start mixing the dough. Okay, 375 gram icing mix. Directly on the table. So if you want to use a machine, yes, you can, mixer. But I like to feel it by my hands. So it's done. 5 gram Tylose. Tylose goes in here. And what we said is 20 gram shortening. Measure also here. Yep. 20 gram shortening. That's there. All right. Put it here. And then get this one directly in the middle. Using rubber scraper is a good idea because it's very sticky, so that it doesn't stick to the rubber. Come on. Yeah. All right. Now, everything in the tapioca pulp. and then the icing sugar, shortening, and the tylose. All right. So what we're doing now is just put the starch on top. In the meantime, that the tylose pulp, the tapioca pulp is cooled down a little bit. Make sure that you don't sort of burn your fingers. All right. So as you see that I'm mixing that, I try to keep this pulp one piece in the middle. That's why I prefer to mix it by hand. But of course, if you make it bigger amount, you have to do it in the machine. So you see that the integrity of the center pulp is actually remains together. All right. So I just put icing sugar inside and then keep folding in. That's like easier to build the dough, to build the paste. You know, you can mix all together if you want, but it will take a bit longer time. So I can feel that the pulp is welcoming that powder without melting down the icing sugar. So if I do this one with the other starch pulps, it will already get watery at the moment. So this one doesn't get watery. See, that's the difference between tapioca and the other ones. Beautiful. So this recipe, what I have here, is actually, as I said, trial and error. According to my ingredients, what I have in my hands, available what I have, and then what's in my temperature in my room, what's the climate here in Australia, in Gold Coast, and this all like plays a role. So you may just find that recipe, what I have here to give you, is not right for your environment. Maybe it's too much moisture in the air or whatever. You have to play with that recipe up and down. So imagine that these 4 ingredients is a kind of like a 4 different buttons to push up and down. So you have to just do the little changes that it suits to your environment. For example, more icing sugar is one option, and then actually more fat is also a good example, because fat covers the sugar. It's eliminates to moisture getting wet so easily. So you may increase find the fat a little bit more, maybe another, I don't know, maybe another 50% or 30 grams, because the amount is very small in this such a big piece. The big piece is about 500 grams. Is it correct? 400? Yeah, it's around 500 grams. So that's a really good amount for one small cake to cover. Now, as I said at the beginning, I put tylose inside to increase the stretch. Stretch means this. So when I put like this, you see, it's breaking up. So I'm going to rest this one about 2 hours. Then I will get back to you to show you the result, the difference between this and after 2 hours. All right? Okay, I don't have to wait 2 hours now, because I have also the other ones I did earlier. So this is now what we did just now. Use starch to give a bit of condition. So as I said, that if you feel there is a kind of problem according to your area, so increasing fat also help you to keep that more soft in longer time. All right, so you can increase the fat if you like. So this is now what we did. So as you see that already stretches a bit more than what you see just now. All right, see, and that is the one I did much earlier. Also stretch, it's good stretch here. And this is the one I did softer version, so didn't use too much of thing. That's a softer for like a bit less experienced chefs that needs to have a little bit more softer choice, that you can use less water inside, also less not less water but less icing sugar. So that is a harder version. This is additional 25% of the icing sugar added to the any kind of weight. So if you take 100 gram, you have to add 25 gram extra icing sugar. I think extra icing sugar is 25% is the maximum, because otherwise you lose complete stretch. All right, so there's no stretch, but it's very firm. So you can just do like this. See, it stays where it is. It's good, especially for modeling. But I have a few words to say later on about modeling to you. So I mixed them all together, all three together, and I'm going to coat my dummy cake now to show you it works. All right. Now, I like to guess a few potential questions you like to ask me and answer them before you ask. So the first question I can think of that you like to ask me, why you don't want to use marshmallow in your homemade fondant? So with the same reason as all fondant manufacturers, I haven't seen any commercial brand have the gelatin in their ingredient list. Maybe I miss it, I don't know. Gelatin has a very high percentage of protein, and it is one of the most favorite food for mold bacteria. So marshmallow is aerated gelatin syrup. After all, I'm not saying that don't use marshmallow for your fondant, homemade fondant. Maybe you have the right recipe with the right amount of fat is balanced together. So gelatin is the best for pastillage when I use it in pastillage, because I aim to have the product rigid at the end. But I don't want my fondant coating gets too dry too quickly. Second question I'm guessing that you want to ask me, can I use this fondant for modeling? Well, if you add a little bit more icing sugar, maybe yes. As I did, 25% extra icing sugar in there makes the fondant more firmer, so I can use for modeling. But I lost my stretch, which doesn't need much anyway for modeling. But don't forget this. A good rolling fondant is no good for modeling. A good modeling paste is no good for rolling. So if you have a fondant does not give you any problem when you're rolling and coating your cake, don't expect more than that. It is two different applications, require two different conditions, and they contradict each other. So fondant has to be soft enough to easy to roll without getting cracks, and then modeling paste, when you do something, it has to maintain the shape what you apply for it. So don't ask two things in one. You have to condition your fondant to get the modeling better. Another question, what about additions like flavoring and coloring, etc.? So you can add all those with no hesitation at all. All right. One more question, I can guess that how long I can keep this fondant. Well, as you realize, none of those ingredients I used in this fondant has a short shelf life, but there is water. So then I have to say, depends on your workplace condition. Keep it in the airtight bag, like this, like the bag. But make sure when you putting in the bag, you push it down like this, nicely, and take all the air out of the corners. And after that, you also roll it nicely like this, and then zip tie it, well, like that. And then you can push again a little bit more, reduce the air pockets inside, and after that you put in a box and keep it in the room temperature. If you realize that condition is changing in a while, then you have to keep maybe in the fridge like this also, packed nicely. And then when you take it out of the fridge, don't take it out of the bag overnight, leave it on the table, next day open up. So there is no numeric answers to that question, like a 10 days, 5 days, or whatever. It depends where you are and what you do. The next question, even you don't want to think about it, but I want you to ask me why you don't use glucose in your fondant. So glucose has one big disadvantage besides all the good news. Too hygroscopic. That means it allows the moisture. I did not use glucose in the late years in my own fondant recipe, and I was much happier on rainy days. So you know what I mean. Okay, let's stop guessing all those questions what you want to ask me. So if you find something that which is not mentioned, please give me a message that I will answer you as quick as possible. So I hope that this video enlightens some of you who wants to try fondant at home as a non-marshmallow alternate recipe. And I'd like to tell you one more time, it's very important, it is not possible or very difficult to make homemade fondant as good as commercial brands for many reasons. Even that, other than the reason what I mentioned, that the size of the icing sugar granules. So, well, I can always say by smile that if the best is not there within your reach, second best is the winner. So I also don't mean that this fondant is the second best. This is what I did. Sort of simply, I mix my available ingredients what I have in my hand, and then in this environment, I just come out with the recipe. That's fine. But do not hesitate to change the recipe according to your need. So if you feel that, for example, the fondant get too quickly dry, so when you're rolling, it's too quickly dry. So increase a little bit fat inside, the fat amount increase, that will help you. And if you see that there is some, for example, cracks appearing very quickly, elephant skin and all those things, then increase maybe 1 or 2 grams of the tylose. But don't forget, when you increase tylose, you're making fondant more tougher. So if you feel that the fondant is too hard, you cannot roll it easily, then reduce your icing sugar. So as I said, just play with that and then find the best of your need. I'd like to show you something. This is what I did yesterday. So I just rolled this fondant and then make it like an arch like this. So as you see that it's quite easy to cut, and inside still soft. This is what I mean, like you can always bite this even after a couple of days. Eventually it will dry, but you don't keep the cakes so long in the room temperature when you want to consume it. Of course, it's not a problem. All right. So let me ask you one more thing before I go. I like to change my direction a little bit and try to do more tutorials covering also general topics rather than individual items. Like for example, instead of making another pastilla centerpiece, I will still do it, of course. Also making a video named also all about pastilla, so more general, more educational videos. So let me know what is in your heart, what you like me to do, so I can just follow your instructions or follow your wishes. So thank you so much for having me today again. So God bless all of you, especially in this troubling time. I wish you health and safety. Until to my next video, bye for now.